You are listening to the Mark Guzman Podcast Experience. My guest today is a recovering scientist. As a research scientist, Kristie Tacey worked in laboratories all her life and was part of the Human Genome Project. But there was more to what she wanted to do with her life, and she was introduced to the world of winemaking. In 2009, she started her own winery, Tessier Wines, and began making her favorite wine varietal, Pinot Noir. Today, she makes many different wines from Viogner to Cab Franc and continues to make her classic Pinot Noir. So please welcome my guest. So Kristie, I want to welcome you to the podcast here.
Thanks.
And I'm excited for this because I just recently met you over at Maker's Common at a fundraising event.
Yeah.
And we've had Noelle and we had Martha
yeah.
on the podcast previously. Cool. And so it was nice to meet or see them again and meet you and a few of the other winemakers. And I'm glad to have you here on the podcast. So I'm excited to dive into the wines here because your wines were really, well, I only tasted one of the wines.
Yeah.
Which one was that?
The Viogner, and I brought it today.
Okay, yeah, that was great wine.
Oh, good.
Yeah, very tasty. And in fact, I recently just discovered that grape variety this year.
Oh, cool.
And I'm surprised by how much I love it.
Yeah, it's really floral and, just sort of an elegant wine. But there are a lot of California styles that can be a little bit heavier, a little bit more cloying, less acidity. So you got to be careful. Not all Viogniers, I'd say, are the same.
Mm-hmm. So we're going to dive a little bit more into this. Now, the name of the winery is Tessier Wines.
Uh-huh.
How did you come up with a name for this?
Tessier is the original French version of my last name, Tacey.
Okay.
So when I was thinking about a brand, I was gravitating towards, French heritage.
Okay. Now I see the logo here that you have has it appears bubbles inside. How did you come up with this logo?
Well, I started out my career as a research scientist. So when I was thinking about the label again, I wanted to do homage to my past. So the label's round as if you're looking through the lens of a microscope, and the bubbles are yeast cells. So budding and, because yeast is the workhorse to make the wines. They're converting sugar to alcohol and, making it fun.
That's awesome. And I like your business card because you have the microscope on there.
Right, exactly. And on the back of the label, too, it says science is art, and then there's a microscope sort of tying it all together. But I feel like a lot of people don't really get it. They're like, oh, those cool bubbles. But, then it's sort of like you can investigate more and find out more.
Now, where is your winery out of?
I make the wines up in Healdsburg. So I'm able to do private tastings up there. But I'm a micro winery. So I just, there are a bunch of other small brands making wines up there as well. Mm-hmm.
And now you're local here in the Bay Area, but you haven't always lived in the Bay Area, correct?
Right. Originally, I'm from Michigan. I grew up in Michigan. I came out to California after college, and I have my degree in microbiology, and I came out for the biotech industry. It was either East Coast or West Coast. But I really felt at home in California, just like all the different cultures and foods and just, free to be different kind of mentality.
That definitely seems to be the trend with every guest that I have on the show.
Oh, really?
That have moved from out of state into California and specifically to the Bay Area. That's been the exact same trend. Is just the openness, the freeness of everything to follow their passion.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And then I got into wine, and my cousin took me wine tasting when I first moved out here. And I was just sort of hooked on that, just seeing the beautiful vineyards and then, paying attention to the subtleties in the wine and then the experience of wine and food. And, I wasn't going back to Michigan after that.
Yeah. Well, it's cold out in Michigan, too.
Yeah, and it's cold, too. Exactly.
Okay, so let's take a look at one of the wines you brought. Let's go with, well, which one would you recommend?
We should start with the white wine, the Viogner first.
Okay.
This is the one that you tried at Maker's Common. They have it there by the glass.
So Maker's Common in Berkeley, I've never been there before, and that's a great little spot.
Yeah, they're new.
Yeah,
It
and their
is a
food
great
was
spot.
phenomenal.
I know, that raclette.
Yes. Which is literally just sliced potatoes with a ton of cheese. But it was amazing to see them with a half block of cheese just being melted little
Yeah,
by
the
little.
special machine to melt it, and they just scooped it off, and I ate it, a whole bunch of it, and then I immediately was like, I need to drink more wine. Like,
Yeah, Kim and I are going to be there on their first Friday,
oh yeah,
January
raclette
5th.
night.
Yep. Yeah, it's
Sweet.
$5.
Oh really?
Yeah.
Wow, I'll have to go too.
Yeah.
See you there.
Okay, so we're going to try this first wine.
Right, so it's Viogner from Russian River Valley. Katie's Corner is the vineyard. So you smell like white flowers, pear, hazelnuts, a little bit of like chamomile flower. But I did this. I kept it really cold in the tank, fermented really cold and slow. It's always been in stainless steel. And then I didn't let it go through the secondary fermentation. I filtered it to stop it so I could preserve some of the acidity. Because I really want, whenever I'm making wine, I'm thinking about how is this going to go with food, you know? It's a nice clean finish. Yeah, what do you think?
It's very good. What would you pair this up with normally?
I could see it going with like seared scallops, or just even, you know, a salad with some sort of like toasted cheese kind of thing. What else?
Like a strawberry salad.
Yeah, or like even a cheese plate. It would be great
Yeah.
with a cheese plate, like some honey, some quince. You know, do like a Brie Savarin, like a creamy cheese and like a couple hard cheeses and some nuts. It'd be great.
It's very smooth wine.
Mm-hmm.
How do you like it, Sam?
Oh yeah, very smooth, very crisp.
Very crisp,
Bit
exactly.
of a tart finish, which I like.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, some like
Let you know-
green
let
apple
you know that it was
quality.
there.
Yeah.
So let's talk about your history before winemaking, because I
Mhm.
really thought this was interesting. You were a research scientist
Mm-hmm.
and you went into winemaking.
Yeah.
Now, what kind of research scientist were you, and how did that evolve from, researching to winemaking?
Yeah. I got my degree in microbiology, and then I worked mainly with genetics because it was just sort of the time. I got a job with Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory to work at the Joint Genome Institute. So I worked on the Human Genome Project. And in 2000, we were working on sequencing chromosomes 5, 16, and 19. We were part of a collaboration where the public effort sort of challenged the public, or the private sector, Celera Diagnostics, challenged the government. And so, they got all these pieces together and created the Human Genome Project. And so it was really cool to be a part of that. And we were published in Nature in 2000, the work that we did. And then later, I worked there for 5 years. And then later I moved to the private sector to work for Celera, actually. And then I worked on central nervous system diseases. So Alzheimer's disease, Parkinson's disease. And we did like large scale case control studies, sort of looking for particular genes that would be responsible for the disease.
So we did a podcast episode earlier this year with Rocksteady Boxing in Albany, and they help Parkinson's or people with Parkinson's disease, and basically try to help them combat and fight the effects of the disease on their body. Now, from a scientist side, what did you discover with certain genes? I mean,
Well, we were looking at a very micro level, like in the level, like, well, first we would read papers and sort of come up with a theory and then look at the single nucleotide polymorphisms that could be responsible. So like a little slip up within that gene. That's what we were looking for. And then we would run a whole bunch of tests on those particular spots and then look at people that had Alzheimer's, people that didn't, or people that had Parkinson's and people that didn't, and see if it was statistically significant, that if we could create a story around that, you know, to figure out, like, is there a target for a drug, or, you know, just to see at a genetic level, like, what's the difference and how can we approach that.
Now, do a lot of these different diseases, and not just Parkinson's, but you said you also worked on Alzheimer's.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, central nervous system diseases.
Yeah. Are most of them hereditary? And then are they activated in some way by some event or by...
Yeah, I mean, we read a lot of papers, and I mean, there's some lifestyle things that you could do. I mean, just try to be like a healthy, moderate person for sure. It is a little bit genetic, and then I mean, I don't. It's complicated, but yeah, it's more hereditary, but people are living longer, so these things are cropping up more, and to figure out like a way to do something about it, or, you know, it's debilitating.
Yeah.
Your family member has Alzheimer's, but this is we particularly study the late onset Alzheimer's. There's an early onset too, which is pretty rare and very genetic, and we can test for that. But this one's, I guess, more common.
So at what point did you decide you wanted to leave being a research scientist?
Oh, I mean,
and what's the main reason why?
Yeah.
I mean, did it just get very repetitive? Was it boring?
It started to be less lab work, and I really enjoyed lab work, and then it more data analysis and statistics and presenting the data. And I mean, when I became a scientist, I always thought I'm going to go back and get my PhD, and ultimately I wanted to be an astronaut, and you had to have your PhD for that. But it takes a lot of, you know, discipline and focus, and I didn't really find anything that I was super grabbed my attention to do that. So then I just started thinking, like, oh, what else could I do with, you know, my microbiology background? And my cousin was a winemaker up north in Sonoma, and he had talked to me about it, and he was like, you know, there's a lot of science involved, like, you could really apply your degree to winemaking. And I was like, started to seriously think about it, and especially when I was in school, I was really into botany, and environmental controls, and so I feel like winemaking really offers that, you know, just the vines and their health and the soils that they live in and the climate that they, you know, are functioning under, and you know, it's capturing that 1 year of fruit and then bringing the fruit in, and the process of that, and the chemistry involved for making the wine, and then the aging and the bottling. I mean,
there's a lot of science.
There's
there.
so much, right? And as a scientist, I was really prepared for that, because I'm really good at paying attention to all the small details, like taking notes and just sort of studying, you know, the art of winemaking. And when I first started, I really was thinking, like, you know, the wine should be this, and I'm going to make it into this, just because I was just getting out of, you know, I was recovering from being a scientist in the lab.
I like how you said that, recovering.
Yeah, that's how I say now. I'm a recovering scientist. And now I understand the process, but I think it all starts in the vineyard. And so I'm, you know, meeting people, meeting growers that I can get the fruit that I want, that's going to give it the best and most interesting expression of that varietal.
So how do you interview growers and inspect their vineyards? I mean, what are some components you look for?
Well, I mean, so I love Pinot Noir, and I was working for a winery in Oakland, Lost Canyon Winery. So after I left the biotech, I had a job with Lost Canyon Winery as their operations manager, assistant winemaker. So I was like learning the craft. And then at the same time, I was also getting my certificate from Davis, doing the online course. But I got a lot of connections with them. So, and they made vineyard designated Pinot Noirs. And so I met their growers and sort of started, collecting my own data on like what I liked about the Pinot Noirs that we made. And, Pinot Noir is really subtle and you have to be really light-handed making wine with it. It can show like, any manipulation that you do, you have to be really gentle and like listen to the grape, I feel like. So I, meeting their growers, that helped me establish relationships. But then further on, when I wanted to go past Pinot Noir, then I started to think like I really fell in love with Grenache after I went to France. And I was thinking, how can I make a Grenache that I love from France, like in California? And then, just reading about all the terroirs around me. And I had a friend that worked at another winery and I tried their wines and I really liked it. And I asked him, where do you get the fruit from? And he was like, oh, I get it, from El Dorado. And, just sort of like unfolds organically. And then I finally like got to meet the grower, Ron Mansfield. And like we really hit it off. And so El Dorado is like a great higher elevation, lots of minerality in the soil. I think he does a really great job with Rhone varietals. And so I started working with him in 2011. And, it just sort of happens. Like you just start investigating and the pathways sort of come out of it.
Yeah, and how they grow it is very interesting to me. I mean, if you taste wines that are grown on where the grapes are grown on flat land compared to, let's say, a hillside,
Right.
completely night and day.
Right. And also, what the soil is composed of too. I mean, it's so cool, like all the little subtleties. And then the weather can change pretty drastically too, depending on what side of the hill you're on, or like higher up, lower up.
Yeah, I mean, there's that very expensive ice wine that they have where I guess I'm not sure on the complete process, but I guess they let the grapes freeze when they pick them.
Yeah, I know. It sounds very painful, right? Like freezing out there, like picking the grapes. Something I wouldn't want to get into.
Yeah. Now, you started the winery in 2009.
Mm-hmm.
What were some of the challenges in getting a winery launched?
Yeah, I mean, it was really scary. Used my own money to like buy I think I did 2 tons of fruit. The biggest piece was, getting good quality Pinot Noir, and that's what I wanted to start off by making. So we had worked with Sarah Lee Cundy through Lost Canyon Winery, and one of the owners brought me up to her place. Like I knew her a little bit, but he wanted to introduce me proper to her, and so I gave her my pitch that I'm going to start my own brand, and I'd really love to work with her fruit, and she's like, okay, I'll give you a chance, So that was like the one big piece, and I was like so excited because she's like so well respected in the industry, and really like supportive of new small brands, and another female business owner too. Like that felt really great as well. But Lost Canyon had sold to Fritz Winery around that same time, and I really enjoyed making wine. I didn't want to go back to being a scientist, so that's why in 2009 I started my own label. And my idea was just to start it small, just to see what happened. And it's a hard business model because, you have to let your wine age for a whole year. So, you make this investment and then you're just sitting on it and waiting. And then it takes a while to sell. But meanwhile, another harvest is happening. So you're like, well, I'll try it again. I'm hoping that people are going to be interested in my wine. It will sell. So then you have to invest again, and it's just sort of like you're always behind a year.
Yeah.
But I sold out of the first vintage like pretty quick thereafter, and then I've just been like growing really slowly, and because I do it all myself, so it's my own money. And
so you have no employees, you're the only person,
right? Yeah, it's sort of crazy, but a
lot of work.
It's a lot of work, but I mean the thing, I've never like had like a major talent at anything, but I think my talent is like being pretty decent at many things. Like I feel like I'm like a Renaissance woman or something. So that definitely helps. Um,
So how
and
did you choose the wines that you wanted to make? Now, well, how many types of wines do you make right now?
oh, now I make so many different ones, but for a while it was only Pinot Noir. 2011 I added Grenache, and then 2012 I added Viogner. Then 2013 I did another vineyard of Pinot Noir in Santa Cruz Mountains. Um, then I think 2015 I added Cab Franc. 2016 I just added Mourvedre, Gamay Noir. And then 2017 I'm adding a Riesling. So I've really like pushed myself to try new varietals, and it's been fun. Like, but at first I was like, I only want to do Pinot Noir.
So you have a love for Pinot.
Yeah.
Where did that come from? Why? Was it one of the very first wines you maybe tasted?
I
What do
mean,
you
I
think?
think it's from my cousin. Like, he was really into Pinot Noir, and it's just like such a subtle, finicky grape. It's complicated, and you have to like be patient with it. I don't know, but it's really rewarding when you find an amazing one. So that's what I wanted to make, and um, but there's so many other neat varietals too. So just like learning more about wine, and um, it's just like keeps expanding my appreciation. Constantly like inspired by new varietals when I travel, or when I have like a bunch of wine study groups that I started up just to learn more about wine, because I love it so
Yeah.
much.
Now, the red wine that you brought today,
Yeah.
let's see. We have one of your Pinots.
Yes.
So let's give that a try.
Yeah,
here.
let's give that one a try. So this is a 2015 Severia vineyard from Santa Cruz Mountains. 2015 was a really interesting year. The cluster sizes were so tiny, and the berries were like so intense. And in 2015, I went.
I love that smell.
Right. It's like pomegranate, hibiscus, like red fruit. Pretty bright. 2015, I started doing all native fermentations. So I don't add any commercial yeast. It's just all naturally occurring yeasts on the grapes. So that was like an exciting kind of change, to let go as a scientist, to not control it, just to let nature take its course.
I have to imagine that's one of the toughest things as a winemaker to, and not just as a recovering scientist, but as any winemaker to just trust the process and allow it to happen, because obviously many things can go wrong.
Many things can go wrong, right? But after traveling to France and Italy and talking to other winemakers, like, they don't even have a word for winemaker. And it's just, bringing the fruit in and just like letting nature take its course. And I really like that idea. Just sort of like seeing what it has to tell me.
That's very good.
The smell just hits you right off the bat.
Yeah.
You almost don't want to drink it, just want to smell it.
Right. There's a lot of, it's a nice perfume, right? And there's a lot of different layers, a lot going on
in there.
And that's what I like about Pinot Noir, that, you can keep going back to the glass and like keep discovering new aromas. And, you have like,
it's definitely like a strong blackberry. Even blueberry.
I love Santa Cruz Mountain Pinot Noir. This is from the Corralitos area, so it's like really cool morning fog, coastal soils. And I met Pretty Fox in 2013, and then I started to get this fruit. It's a private vineyard, pretty small. And she's known as the Queen of Pinot Noir. Like she works on all these small private vineyards, and she's from the Midwest too. Like we really hit it off, and I feel like, she knows the style that I'm going for. So, we'll always talk like before harvest, like what the clones are tasting like, and I try to get out there a couple times before we pick.
Now, can you give us an example of how, let's say, the type of soil or even the elevation could affect the final wine product?
Well, this is like a mid-level elevation. But, the sandy soils is like good for drainage. It makes the grapes, the roots struggle. But something like the Grenache or my new one too, the Gamay Noir. So there's granite soils at that vineyard site, and so it's like pretty rocky. And in Beaujolais, like most of the vineyards are granite soils as well. So it's sort of, I love Beaujolais, and then this is like a California expression. It's sort of like true to true to the source. And then I think it can come through with like more minerality, more structure, just like the more challenging soils. But it's always interesting to note like what's going on in the soil. Like I just did a champagne tasting last night, and some of the regions are more like chalky, and I feel like you can really get that in the aroma of the wine too. I don't know.
Some chalkiness.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the thing I find with a lot of Pinot Noirs is some come out very, very sharp with high alcohol taste, really bitter, like just from the very get-go. And I'm not a huge fan of that.
Yeah, I feel like Pinot Noir on the market now, it's like really saturated. So it's like the bubble's gonna burst from sideways finally.
It seems like it's the new Merlot.
I
Remember
know,
when Merlot
totally.
was completely
I want to
out
make
there?
a Merlot now.
Yeah.
That's what I feel like.
Well, actually you should. There's a
know.
lot of wineries that are now starting to go back into Merlot.
Yeah, there are a lot of great Merlots, and that's the great thing, is cleaned it up and made people try harder. But yeah, I feel like that's sort of happening with Pinot Noir now. There's a lot on the market. It's not really like true to the varietal. I mean, Pinot Noir is finicky. It needs to be in a cool climate. It's sensitive, and it needs to be taken care of. You can't just like mass produce it. It can't just be grown anywhere. And I just think a lot of the stuff that's out now is just mediocre and not that great. And I mean, that's why I sort of backed away too and decided to stratify and do different varietals. Yeah.
Now, how much experimenting do you do with your wines?
I do a little bit of experimenting with like whole cluster. So I've been messing with that. So the 2015 I did, like 10% whole cluster. So it gives that like a little bit of bramble, kind of like a crispy herb kind of thing going on in the wine. I don't know if you can get it. Or like a dried herb. That's the expression that I think that it does.
Yeah, the amazing thing about wine is that everyone's going to pick up something a little bit different on the nose and even on their palate, just depending on how complex it is.
But I mean, as far as experimenting, like I just take lots of notes on all the things that I do with the wine every year. 'Cause, every year you get like a fresh start, like a new chance to make the best one that you can. And so you just want to sort of remember, what did I do in the past? Did I like it? I can do this tweak now. Like figuring out, when's the optimal time to pick the fruit. So it's nice to work with vineyards year after year. Then you sort of get a feel for it. And, you can keep tweaking it as years go on. And then also with the different techniques too, like the whole cluster, or like different aging process. Or like with the Cab Franc, 2015, I made a Cab Franc from the Alegria vineyard. And I did some whole cluster, and I did the foot stomp with that one. And the tannins were pretty aggressive. So then for 2016, I was thinking like, I'm just going to do a pump over rather than doing the foot stomp, to just, just to be more gentle. And I think it really helped. Like the tannins were way more smooth. I mean, maybe it was the vintage. Like you always have to think about that too. It's not a perfect experiment.
So the difference between a foot stomp and a pump over is really just to get more tannins or less tannins out of it?
Well, I mean, I do foot stomps for like the Grenache, the Mourvèdre, and the Cab Franc. I do punch downs for the Pinot Noir. The Grenache, the clusters are massive. So I'm sort of a small person, and I usually do the fermentations in T-bins. I don't have like a ton of upper body strength. I mean, I'm always working on it. But so it's hard to like get through the cap when it's fermenting. So I decided to just get in the bin because my legs are stronger. It was easier. And it was really neat to like be in contact with the fermentation too. It's such a cool feeling. Like you can feel all these like micro pockets of the fermentation happening and to like really stir it up. And so yeah, I've coined the term now, lady foot stomp. So a lot of the Rhone varietals are lady foot stomp, but yes, I you know, that can rupture the stems and the seeds and you know, put a little more tannins into the wine. Where pump over is just you know, putting the hose into the fermentation and then, you know, pulling out the juice into a pan maybe to like splatter and then going back into the fermentation.
Now,
like going back over top of it just to aerate it a little bit.
So do you age your wine in barrels or is it steel containers?
I age all my red wines are aged in barrels. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
But the white wines I tend to do all in stainless steel and tank.
Okay. Now, how's the barrel selection process for you?
Mm-hmm.
Because I know barrels can be, there's a ton of different
yeah, there's so many
barrels
choices,
and,
right?
Yeah. Toastings and the...
Yeah. I mean, it helped to work with Lost Canyon Winery. We worked with a bunch of different coopers, and right now I use one cooper from Burgundy that I really like. You know, it's like I'm a small business, so I want to like give my business to other small businesses that I respect and like, and so I work with Rousseau pretty exclusively, and I only use New Oak for the Pinot Noirs, and it's just like roughly around like 20 to 30%. My other varietals, I just use my old Pinot barrels, and then they're at least like 3 to 4 years old. So they're neutral French oak. So it's not really imparting any flavor to the wine, just more like concentrating the wine.
Interesting.
Softening the tannins. Yeah. So then it's like a really true, you know, truly true expression of this, you know, the vineyard and the varietal. So you can like get a sense of place from that wine. That's what I'm going for.
So as a recovering scientist, it seems like winemaking is right up your alley. I mean, just every component of winemaking literally takes a lot of knowledge and science behind it.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah.
I haven't thought about it like that.
Now, do you do wine tastings at the winery?
I can do private wine tastings, and I have a mailing list, and I do lots of pop-up events and winemaker dinners. I really like to do that. Like locally, I live in Berkeley, so I'm always trying to collaborate with chefs because it's also really fun for me to, you know, taste the wines of someone else. Like I work by myself mainly, and then talk about food and wine, and you know what we both want to get out of, you know, what we want to accomplish with the food and wine. It's really fun, and I think it's great for people too. Like they can just come in and like we did all the work up front for them, so they can just have a nice experience. Like they don't have to figure out what they're going to eat or drink. Like,
yeah, like at Maker's Common, yeah.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that was a neat event because 5 wineries and each of your wines were paired up with a certain dish that they prepared.
I know. They did a great job too. I tried all the pairings and I thought really spot on. Like they really tasted the wines and thought about it. Like what cheese and what dish can we make to really highlight it?
Yeah. And I wish I would have brought it, but the one that was paired up with your Viogner was, it was
the prima donna cheese.
Yeah, it was cheese on top of a pastry bread.
I think it was like a pie crust, and then I think it was like quince jam or something.
There was jam and cheese. It was goat cheese.
I don't think that was a goat cheese. It was I don't know.
I have it at home. I should have brought it with me today.
It was delicious.
Yeah, it was very good.
They did a great job for sure.
Yeah, and they have a great selection too. I saw that they have cheese bread.
Oh yeah. I mean, their grilled cheese are amazing. Definitely. And then I just had their cassoulet. Like, I think that's on their menu all the time. You can get it for like 1 to 2 people or 2 to 4 people. And it's just like a peasant dish with like sausage and duck confit and beans. Delicious.
Yeah, the one thing I love about pairing wine with food is, really great example is if you eat a piece of fatty meat and then drink a little bit of red wine right after. Well, actually, let me back it up. You take a sip of red wine first, then you eat a fatty piece of meat, and then you go back to the red wine. Yeah. That red wine tastes completely different.
Right. It changes it.
Yeah.
And also, like, the wine, you want a more tannic wine then that can handle the fat. So then it sort of cleanses your palate. So you're ready again for that next bite of food.
Yeah.
To get all
So
the amazing flavors.
so when you're pairing food with wine, what kind of combination are you looking for?
I mean, it depends. You want the wine to complement the food, and the food to complement the wine, and you sort of think about like the flavors that are going on in the wine and how to either contrast or enhance those flavors. I mean, that's how I sort of attack it.
So I guess usually fatty foods go with red wine. Would that
Fatty
be the
foods,
rule of thumb?
yeah, or like a more tannic wine, like a Cabernet Franc or something with like a heavier fattier meat, because there's the tannins are gonna like bind that up and sort of, you know how like when you have a tannic wine and it makes your tongue feel dry, like that's what I'm saying. Like it'll sort of cleanse your palate so you're ready for like the next bite.
Okay. And then white wines, you would normally pair it. I know they say chicken and fish and that.
Yeah, I don't think you need to stick with those rules. Like, it can be so versatile, but it depends on the wine. I mean, I've had some really like savory white wines that could go
Or like red meat or something.
Yeah, totally. It just depends on the wine and like the skin contact and all that jazz.
Now, how much do you sell your wines for?
The Viogner is 32, and the 2015 Pinot Noir I think is 45. But it's all on my website. Can always order through there. And then I also have a wine club, which is sort of like the best way I think to experience my wines. I mean, they're all like, I want you to really get an idea of the sense of place, because most of them are vineyard designate, one varietal, minimal handling, like naturally occurring yeasts. So it's just all sort of from the place. But joining my wine club, I write extensive notes on them, and I even do like some music pairings with the wines.
Really?
Like what the wine feels to me like in a like certain song or certain music.
That's awesome. So, I mean, what would be an example of that?
I just did this 2015, the Santa Cruz Mountains. I did it with I think this was a Charlotte Gainsbourg song. So sort of like French, like seductive. This was like I just wanted to capture like the personality of the wine. So I try to personify what the wine is through music, since I really love music.
That's
like
awesome though. No, that's amazing, because I think that's the first winery or first wine person that's ever done that.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know anyone else that does that actually mixes up music with their wines.
And I've done it a couple other times too. Like I'm gonna do a rosé again this year, and it's the Femme Fatale rosé. So it's a blend of Pinot Noir and Grenache, and I love the Velvet Underground, so I have like lyrics from the Velvet Underground on the back of that label too. And then I've also done an After Hours Pinot Noir, which is like a combination of the two Pinot Noirs, just like as a blend. And After Hours is another Velvet Underground song, like one of my favorite ones, sung by Mo Tucker, the drummer. And then I did do like a small batch sparkling Gewürztraminer, and that I did. I have a spiritualized song on the back of that, like some space rock that I was like really into too.
So how many events are you doing per year where you're going out and pitching your wine?
I mean, as many that will have me. Like it's such a fun way. Like I'm a new brand, so I try to get out there as much as possible. I'm in quite a few restaurants like in the East Bay in San Francisco, and I just try to stop by and talk with the staff too. Like they're the ones that are going to sell my wine, make sure they know me, make sure they know about the wines. And yeah, I would always do an event with anybody, because it's, again, I'm working by myself. It's nice to collaborate and then get a new audience. And I think it's just the best way too, is like food and wine coming together. And
so obviously you're a busy person.
I'm a busy person.
Yeah. So how do you manage your time with all that?
I don't know. I'm working on it. I do, yoga. I try to like chill out, but It's nice. Like, the wine, all the wine barrels are like my children. I mean, I don't like have any children, but the wine barrels are my children. So they're like just part of my life. Yeah. Yeah.
So I want to thank you for being on the podcast. This was fun.
Thank
We
you.
had
It
some
was fun.
great conversations. The wine's phenomenal. Best way to buy your wine? Tell the listeners.
On my website, so it's tessierwinery.com, and then also there's a Find Us tab. So I'm in quite a few wine shops and restaurants, so you can go firsthand and experience food and wine, or buy through my website, and then you can make your own dish. You should email me and tell me too if you come up with a great dish with one of my wines.
Oh,
Love to hear
nice.
that kind of stuff too.
That's great. And I know on your page you have a whole page, or on the website you have a whole page dedicated to the different vineyards.
Yeah. So you can like really learn more about where these wines come from.
Great.
Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you for being on the show, and wish you the best in the venture.
Thank you so much. It was awesome.
Yeah. Thank you so much for listening to the podcast. Thank you to our producer, Sam Lubman. Please subscribe, like, comment, and share the podcast. Remember, you can listen to the podcast on iTunes, Podbean, iHeartRadio, Google Play, SoundCloud, and anywhere else you listen to podcasts. For more information on my business as a property manager and real estate team, go visit my website at markguzman.com. I really want to thank all of you for listening. It means the world to me, and I hope today's episode provides you value in your day-to-day life. I created this podcast to help showcase the many great people that live in this world and help share some knowledge that I've learned along the way in life. Again, thank you for listening. Check out our sponsors, and I'll catch you on the next episode.